Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel, and today I'm back here with another My Team Career Mode Season 3 video, and it is of course the Belgian Grand Prix weekend. But as always, if you guys haven't already watched the last video, which was the Hungarian Grand Prix, then click off this one now, as we are going to head to the standings to look at what was quite an interesting Grand Prix to say the least, but a disappointing result for ourselves. P6 with the fastest lap after we recovered from 11th on the grid after a CE component change. It could certainly have been a top 5 though for ourselves, but a poor safety car restart dropped us behind Nobuharu Matsushita, and it took us a couple of laps to get back past him. By that point we were already 5 seconds behind the likes of Carlos Sainz and Sergio Perez, and we never managed to really recover that. And then at the end of the Grand Prix we had a comfortable gap back to 7th, so we opted to pit onto softs and take the fastest lap. But P6 with the fastest lap means we have 123 points. That means that we got quite a large deficit to my teammate Charles Leclerc, who managed to take the win last time out. Fantastic drive. Took pole, was then demoted down the order due to a grid penalty, but fought his way back up, gained a couple of places under the pit stops, and then picked off George Russell and Max Verstappen at the end of the Grand Prix to take the win. My teammate Charles Leclerc finished in front of Max Verstappen. He took a strong P2 once again on the podium. 105 points on the board now for him this season. He finished in front of George Russell, who took his first podium since the Spanish Grand Prix this season. A great P3 for him and his Ferrari, and 47 points. He finished in front of Sergio Perez, who was a little bit off the pace of his teammate and the two Ferraris, finishing P4 there. Started to drift away towards the end of the Grand Prix, but a strong result for the Mexican. He has 58 points on the board now after that. He finished in front of Carlos Sainz, who had decent pace, but a poor start dropped him down from P1, which he inherited due to my teammate taking grid penalties. And then, of course, under the pit stops, he dropped behind Sergio Perez and couldn't get past Carlos, finished P5. He was in front of ourselves while we finished in front of a fantastic performance for Nobuharu Matsushita, his first points in Formula 1, and he took a whole 6 of them. An insane drive. Didn't have incredible pace, but he drove absolutely perfectly. Pierre Gasly was P8 in his AlphaTauri, just behind. Once again, a strong result for him outperforming what is quite a dismal car at this stage in the season. His teammate Lance Stroll, though, didn't have great fortunes. Stroll was running in the points until he ended up spinning at the chicane, and that took him down the order and eventually finished in P19. The safety car itself was caused by Robert Schwartzman. He spun 2. Having a look further down the order, of course, P9 was Esteban Ocon, a fantastic drive in his Alpine after he started further back down the order due to grid penalties. He recovered up to P9, an insane drive and some well-deserved points there, his first points of the season. He finished in front of Lewis Hamilton, who was P10 in his Mercedes. Both Mercedes and McLarens opted, with their strategy, not to pit under the safety car. They ultimately had to recover from the back. Poor strategies. Hamilton recovered to P10. Valtteri Bottas was P13. Lando Norris just in front of him in P12. In terms of the constructors' standings, we maintain our comfortable lead over Red Bull, while it's all square for P3 between Ferrari and Mercedes. All to play for there, 83 points for both. McLaren a little bit further behind in 5th with 62, while AlphaTauri have 35 points. Alpine have 8 points in 7th. Aston Martin are catching up. They're on 7 points. I mean, they're just 1 point behind and really in contention to fight with Alpine towards the end of the season. And now we can get straight into some R&D, and we've got an opportunity to gain some acclaim or some R&D, and I think it has to be some R&D points. We want to keep pushing on with durability upgrades so we don't have any issues towards the end of the season. That would be heartbreaking to have a mechanical failure or anything like that for ourselves. But of course, it can go both ways. Charles could have a mechanical failure, and that could help us win the championship. We've got plenty of R&D at the moment, having a look through what we can go for. And the major turbo durability, we might as well not rush that. That will not be in for the Belgian Grand Prix, but we can get that in for the Grand Prix after, which is, of course, Mexico, the penultimate round of the season. We're going to go past that press conference. There's no need to show that. It's just a load of waffle from Will Buxton's virtual character. Then, continuing along, we are going to go for another department upgrade. We're going to go for quality control in the durability. Just get that up a level. We certainly need that considering how many upgrades we're getting in durability, because we've pretty much maxed out every other department. Having a look at the departments, in fact, durability, back over there, we can go for another upgrade, but it's got to probably be the CE upgrade, because that's massively reduced, 22% off. Everything else does seem a tad too expensive for our budget at the moment. So it will be the CE electrical systems failure analysis, and that will be in for Mexico, provided we don't have any shenanigans with that package. In terms of the end of the season, we are going to be using the same CE at this weekend as we did in Mexico, and then we got a fresh CE for the final 2 races of the season, so we won't have to take any more grid penalties. We have luckily managed to get that powertrain upgrade in with no problems. We've maxed out powertrain and chassis, and we will be maxing out aero before the Mexican Grand Prix. But of course, it is time to get into the Belgian Grand Prix weekend at Spa. We did some free practice, got a very nice amount of R&D. That's now at 1,481 for the team as a total. We'll have a look at that in a minute. But before, we have got the weather forecast, and it is looking very spicy. Qualifying set to be full wet conditions to slick conditions by the end of it. That should be very entertaining and very interesting with the transitioning between the conditions. And then the race is going to be nice and dry. Hopefully allow us to have some fantastic overtakes down the Kennel Straight. In terms of our rivalry with Sergio Perez, he does lead us 5-4, but it shouldn't be too difficult for ourselves to fight back in that. Still 3 races left in the season. There is an R&D change, regulation change, heading into Season 4, but of course we won't be playing Season 4 on F1 2021. It will be on the 2022 games. No need to worry about that. We're just looking at ploughing in the upgrades. We might just secure some of the upgrades once we got to the point where any upgrades we won't be able to get in for Jeddah. But we don't actually have enough R&D to go for any more durability upgrades. So in terms of the R&D graph heading into this weekend, we do once again maintain a pretty comfortable lead over the chasing pack, but that has really fragmented. Mercedes moving a slight amount in front of Ferrari and Red Bull, who remain together in the middle of that pack, while McLaren start to drift away. The gap from McLaren to Alpine remains very similar. Alpine still looking strong this weekend, but Aston Martin slowly starting to reduce that gap. Then it's quite a way back to Williams and AlphaTauri. Some great upgrades for Williams as they bounce back. AlphaTauri still yet to bring in an upgrade since the British Grand Prix. They're really struggling. And then there's a gap back to Alfa Romeo, and then Haas once again are at the back. So what can Mercedes do? They've got a good-looking car this weekend. Will McLaren struggle? AlphaTauri struggles are likely to continue. And then, of course, Aston Martin, they could be a bit of a wild card, and it's certainly all going to be wild cards, especially for qualifying. Welcome to Q1, and I was talking about wild cards before. Well, we might not be playing cards here, you certainly wouldn't want to be. They get very soggy. But the weather is absolutely wild. Monsoon-style conditions here. Absolutely bucketing it down. Loads of standing water, and it's extremely slippery. You see, we went wide at turn 1 a bit onto the runoff and over that curb. Thankfully, no floor damage, but also fully off the throttle through Rouge and Radio, and that really shows how slippery this track is. An awful lot of standing water. I just cannot believe these conditions at the moment. We're just trying to find the breaking points in these conditions, because it does vary, of course, depending on how wet it is, how slippery it is, how greasy the surface is. Towards the end of the lap, it has been a bit of a finder. Not really a competitive lap time, but this is absolutely insane. When it was going to be heavy rain, I was not expecting this at all. Full wet conditions, which is nice to have a bit of a change. Braking quite early for the bus stop chicane, which is a bit weird because we've always been braking too late for all the other corners. Too early into the bus stop chicane, and then by not carrying enough speed through, we're really slow on the exit over the line. Pretty poor lap there, P5, but it's just a finer. I think we'll return to the pits. And looking at it, 5 minutes to go in the session. Intermediates already quicker, nearly by 7/10 compared to fresh, wet tyres. So the conditions changing a lot quicker than I expected. I thought Inters would probably be Q2. Well, we're getting them here in Q1, and I also expected everyone to be out on track to have a go at these green-marked intermediate tyres, but quite a few of the cars are sticking with their wet compound laps. That's including my teammate, one of the Ferraris, both McLarens, both Red Bulls, and both Mercedes, I do believe. Good start to our lap, of course. You can see we didn't go wide at turn 1, carrying a good amount of pace. They're still a bit too cautious, maybe, through Eau Rouge and Radion, but the track is visibly looking a little drier. Generally, the main telling point here is the rain. It's an awful lot lighter, thankfully, and a strong-ish sector 1 for ourselves. Just, again, trying to figure out the track. We've gone out a little bit late, so I think we've only got this lap, so it'll have to be a decent one, but we are nearly, and already actually, improving by 2 seconds into this right-hander, struggling to keep it at the curb, drifting out a bit wide, got to start to get going over the curb there. That cost us a little bit of time mounting that massive curb, and it's been a bit of a messy middle sector, especially towards the end of it, and you can see we've only gained 2.7 seconds, and I'm a little bit worried that we might find ourselves in a tad of trouble, because quali is complete, but we carry a lot more speed through the bus stop chicane and on the exit, and I think that should be enough. Looking at the results of Q1, yes, it is. We are through comfortably in P4. Despite that, it was a pretty poor lap, way off the pace of the slower Ferrari in the hands of Carlos Sainz, or 1.3 seconds behind for ourselves. But great lap from Carlos, 1 minute 52.278 there from him. Solid work in front of the 2 Alpines. Alonso in front of Esteban Ocon. Alonso will be really happy with that in his Alpine. Only 5/10 behind Carlos Sainz. Ocon will be a bit disappointed to be 5/10 behind Fernando. He's got a bit of work to do to catch up to his teammate in Q2. We are, of course, P4. Plenty to build on in these wet conditions. Trying to find a bit more pace, hopefully, for what could be a wet Q2. But yeah, Gasly's P5. Fantastic work in that Alpha Tauri. Really great to see. Not a competitive car, so fantastic to see him up in the top 5. Yes, I know, not all the cars have gone, but great to see him through to Q2. Charles Leclerc, my teammate, this really shows his pace. On the wet tyres is P6 in front of some of the intermediate runners. 1 minute 54.1 on the wet. Absolutely dominant, even in these wet conditions. I'm sure he'll be back at the top of the timing sheets in Q2. Matsushita is through in P7. Is Aston Martin on the Inters. Strong work from him, continuing a strong rookie season, just in front of Lance Stroll, who will be happy to make it through in his AlphaTauri. Not the best of machinery, but a solid lap from him in front of Robert Schwartzman. Matsushita's teammate is down there in P9. He's also through. Then we get on to a lot of the wet tyre runners. We've got Valtteri Bottas in P10 in his Mercedes. The Mercedes looking decent on paper, and so far it's first blood to them against Red Bull. Max Verstappen in P11, a little bit off the pace of Valtteri Bottas, but he'll be happy to be in front of Lewis Hamilton, who is in P12 in his Mercedes. Mercedes not convincingly ahead of Red Bull, but they are in front at this stage. Sergio Perez down there in P13, not quite finding the pace of his teammate, and Lewis Hamilton. Then we've got 2 McLarens, Lando Norris in front of Daniel Ricciardo. They didn't go out again. Fantastic work there from both of them, considering how slow that McLaren is on paper compared to the others. Only 3/10 behind, and Norris just in front of Daniel Ricciardo. Very close between the two. Ricciardo starting to get comfortable in that car. And then just behind them, George Russell is P16, but only just through in his Ferrari. A risk to stay out on those wet tyres, but he kept that lap. He didn't go out again on the Inters, and he just makes it through in front of Nicholas Latifi, who's knocked out in Q1 on his intermediate tyres. P17 for him. Just missing out on Q2. Nonetheless, a great performance from the Canadian in Q1. Really starting to find some pace in his Williams, which we haven't seen for a couple of seasons. Then Wang Yuzhou, the Chinese driver for Alfa Romeo, is in P18. Another great qualifying performance from him. Really starting to find some better pace in his teammate in that Alfa Romeo towards the second half of the season. And of course, great to see the rookie in some challenging conditions getting a strong result. Antonio Giovinazzi will be disappointed though with P19 in his Williams, not finding the pace of his teammate once again in qualifying. A bit of work to do for the Italian. P19 just in front of the Haas behind him of Mick Schumacher. Fantastic work from Mick Schumacher to be P20. Challenging conditions, and he still ends up with his Haas in P20. Really great for him not to be in the bottom 2. Again, another strong result for him considering the machinery he's been given. And then behind him, Yuki Tsunoda will be incredibly disappointed with P21. Nowhere near the pace of his teammate. An awful lot of work to do in the race. He's really struggled in qualifying sessions quite recently compared to how he was doing at the start of the season. And then Mazepin is P22. No surprises, but it's quite surprised how far he is off there. Maybe he made a mistake on his intermediate tyre lap. Potentially run wide somewhere onto the grass. Into Q2, we are not going to go out straight away because somehow the rain will have cleared up in 10 minutes into the session. So we will have slick running at the end of Q2. Wasn't expecting this to come that early. I thought it'd be the end of Q3. But as you can see, end of Q2 here. There was no point us going out onto the intermediate tyres and potentially risking the car. That's never a good thing to do. So we're out on the slick tyres, and lovely to find some nice grip into turn 1 there, the hairpin. carrying some good speed. And now as we go up through Eau Rouge and Radion, the car not that planted through this section, sometimes a little bit of a lift necessary just so that we don't spin out through Eau Rouge and Radion, which is a bit weird. Also had that back at Silverstone through turn 1 and turn 2, the car not feeling as planted, but still quite nice to drive in the lower speed corners and really hooking it up over those curbs through that section. A very decent start to the lap, I'd say, especially at the start of Sector 2. Towards the end of the lap, though, it hasn't been the best at the end to Sector 2, and I think we're certainly going to need another lap, although it hasn't been terrible. I think we'll need another lap over the curb. Way too much over the curb! Thankfully, we managed to control the oversteer and the car doesn't spin out. That will have cost us 5/10, so we certainly have to go again. 1 minute 41.721 will not be enough, and a bit of a lock-up into turn 1 means we're not that smooth on the exit, and that's costing us time. Norris, of course, gone quicker. Matsushita, thankfully, has gone slower. We can't afford to be slower than the Aston Martin. Sainz then goes ahead of Norris. Verstappen goes quickest at this stage. We've got the McLaren of Ricciardo in front of us, so we have to improve this lap, because I think we'll be knocked out if we don't do so. Even Alonso goes quicker, and a poor Sector 1 here, mounting way too much to the curve on the inside line. That's risky. It can spin you out. My teammate Charles Leclerc, as expected, going quickest, and then too much to the curb on the exit there. But towards the end of the lap, we've cleaned it up a bit at the end of the middle sector. That's helped us. And now through the fast and flowing final sector, if we don't make a mistake at the bus stop chicane, we should be through to Q3 in what has been a very, very interesting qualifying session. We were out on the wets just a few minutes ago. Now we're here on the slicks through the bus stop chicane. We don't make the same mistake, and you can see instantly about 5/10 gained. A poor exit, but nonetheless, looking at the results, we are through in P10 to Q3, but still, that's a bit worrying. Although it wasn't the best of representative laps for ourselves, we have got an awful lot of work to do compared to my teammate Charles Leclerc, who is quickest in Q2 by quite a ways in the 1 minute 39s, a 1 minute 39.521, still a lap from the Monegasque here in Q2. And it's the 2 Red Bulls, Max Verstappen in front of Sergio Perez. Great work from Verstappen, a couple of tenths quicker than his Mexican teammate, and once again, Max is quite a bit quicker than the chasing pack, which in this instance is led by Perez. The 2 Mercs then follow, Valtteri Bottas in front of Lewis Hamilton, and those two not finding the pace they should have had on paper. In practice, that Mercedes doesn't look that fantastic. Then behind them, you've got the 2 Ferraris, George Russell in front of Carlos Sainz. Russell just off the back of the Mercedes, great work from him. Sainz, in comparison, not doing as great. He's quite a bit off Russell, 2.5 tenths to be quite exact there. So Sainz with a lot of work to do to try and catch up to his teammate and get a bit more into the mix for Q3. Following the 2 Ferraris then, and towards the back of this group, the 2 McLarens, you've got Lando Norris and Daniel Ricciardo. Not too far off Lando Norris he's not too far off Carlos Sainz. So solid work from Lando Norris there in Q2 in front of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo. Those two very close. Then we are, of course, through in P10. Hopefully we can find some pace in Q3. Then knocked out in Q2, Fernando Alonso in his Alpine, P11 for the Spaniard. Just knocked out, nonetheless, a great qualifying result in that Alpine, and a very strong looking car that could be in the mix into the Grand Prix on Sunday. Pierre Gasly, P12 in Q2. Fantastic work considering he's in that AlphaTauri. Just about 3 tenths behind Alonso. Great work, and he's in front of the faster Alpine in the hands of Esteban Ocon. He'll be disappointed, 4 tenths behind his teammate and a couple of tenths behind a much slower AlphaTauri driven by Pierre Gasly. Lance Stroll is P14, solid work in his AlphaTauri. Again, an uncompetitive car, and it's continuing to be like that, so solid work. In front of the 2 Aston Martins, Matsushita, once again P15 in front of his teammate Robert Schwartzman, P16. That's becoming quite a feature in Q2. Once again, though, great to see them there. Matsushita in his rookie season doing slightly better than Robert Schwartzman, who's been here for 3. Of course, he was my teammate in Season 1 when we got an F2 driver, and out we go in Q3, the final part of qualifying, into the hairpin at the start of the lap, going a bit too wide on the exit, going over that very large orange sausage curb, and it's quite a long one to say the least. It's like multiple sausage curbs added together. Oh, through Rouge and Radion, pretty smooth through there, pushing the limits, which you've got to do, and of course DRS is finally enabled. We can open that flap in the rear wing, and the sun is blazing. You wouldn't know that just a couple of sessions ago it was full wet conditions. What a qualifying session this has been. Towards the end of our first lap, it's been a bit of a first lap. You guys will know what I mean if you've seen some of my other performances in qualifying, it's not the best. Carlos Sainz currently quickest. Will he be topped by the Mercedes? Yes, he will. Hamilton, 1 minute 46.78. Our lap has been mildly uncompetitive, and towards the line we go, P5. That's pretty disappointing for ourselves, but of course I think there's still a lot of pace to be found, and you can see they're much nicer into turn 1. Max Verstappen, 1 minute 45.80. He goes quick as his teammate will be next across the line, but much cleaner in turn 1. That's already getting us 3.5 tenths. That's how much time we lost from making a mistake. Sergio Perez crosses the line, and he goes quickest, 1 minute 40.561. What a lap there from Checo. Quicker than his teammate Max Verstappen. He'll be hoping to keep that towards the end of this session. Fantastic performance there. Meanwhile, into sector 2, nicely over those 2 curves. You want to be careful on the first of the curves into there. That can spin you. Taking quite a bit on the exit curve, but still a solid lap here. We've gained through sector 1, gained through sector 2, and this could really put a cat amongst the pigeons here. We could potentially be getting into the mix. I still think there's more pace to be found for ourselves, but hard on the brakes into the bus stop chicane. Maybe we could have carried a bit more speed through. Either way, off the exit, and it's a pretty smooth exit. That's going to give us more time upon our previous lap, and P4. That's pretty solid. Only a tenth behind the Red Bull of Sergio Perez, and we are out once again here in Q3 for a final lap on a fresh set of soft tyres. It's a decent start into the hairpin. Nicely through there, and we've actually got a good exit. That's going to help us all the way on the run up to the first corner in sector 2. Interestingly, only one of the McLarens has gone out of everyone. One McLaren and myself, 2 out of the 10 cars out for a final run in Q3. I don't know why, because it's not as if everyone's burnt up tyres, because we didn't use any slicks in Q1 and then the first half of Q2, so I have no idea why. But anyway, that means that we haven't got a moving target, and that means that Perez's time is going to stick. So we're aiming at a front row, and it's a decent start to the lap, hooking it up nicely through that hairpin corner into no name. A bit of a slide though, carrying a bit too much speed, and then we lose a lot of speed on the exit all the way down to P1. That could prove costly. Hooking it up nicely on the inside, a little bit wide. Warning for exceeding track limits. Won't have gained that too much there. Don't worry about that too much. Anyway, we continue along through this section, really trying to use just the edges of the curves just to be able to maximise the track, but don't want to unsettle the car over them. And it's a decent end to the lap, of course, now flat from here all the way up to the bus stop chicane, if you can get it right on the exit, and we do. Running it close to that curve, it can spin you out, but this is a very solid lap. We've got to beat a 1 minute 45.61. This is our final attempt. Last lap, a 1 minute 46.67. And now heading up to the bus stop chicane. This will decide whether we are going to be on the front row or whether we're going to be on the second row to start the Grand Prix. It's pretty smooth through the bus stop chicane. Not the best of exits. And we're over the line. And it is P2. We are starting on the front row alongside my teammate Charles Leclerc. Really, really happy with that. Our best lap, 1 minute 40.432. Exactly where we wanted to be. And now we can battle Charles in the Grand Prix, but he is once again on another league, one lap, and he sets a 1 minute 39.592. The only one of us capable to get into the 1 minute 39s. Absolutely insane pace from the Monegasque, and he's going to be very difficult to try and beat in the Grand Prix. We are, of course, P2. We'll be looking to fight him. Hopefully we have some better race pace than we did in qualifying. We've got the 2 Red Bulls. Sergio Perez in front of Max Verstappen. Fantastic work from Perez just in front of his teammate. Those two almost inseparable with their times, but incredible work from Checo to be P3 in front of Max Verstappen. He'll be looking to fight back and take another podium this season in the Grand Prix, starting from P4. It's an all Red Bull row 3. And it's also an all Mercedes row 3, all Red Bull row 2. Mercedes are P5 and P6, Hamilton and Bottas, and they are going to be quite frustrated with that. The car looks great on paper, but those two don't have the pace of the Red Bulls. Hamilton just in front of his teammate Valtteri Bottas. Then we've got the Ferrari of Carlos Sainz recovering from a disappointing Q2 to be P7 in Q3. Solid work from the Spaniard there. Just 1.5 seconds off Charles' lap. Doesn't quite have the pace in the Mercs, but good work to be in front of Lando Norris, who's P8, a fantastic lap in the McLaren, outperforming a car that's pretty uncompetitive this weekend. Great work from Lando, and he is in front of his fellow countryman George Russell in a faster Ferrari. Russell beaten to 8th by 1/1000th. That's pretty unlucky for George there, but a bit disappointing. Got a little bit of pace to find. So did his teammate Carlos Sainz. And then Daniel Ricciardo in P10 quite a way off the pace in his McLaren. A lot of work to do in the race if he wants to be competing with his teammate. But of course, we are set for a very interesting Spa Grand Prix, and hopefully it'll be a very exciting one, and one that goes down in history. Spa, of course, a place to make memories.
Welcome along then to the Belgian Grand Prix, the race that gave us the maiden victory for the Jordan team in 1998. And in the same team, the phenomenal debut of a young Michael Schumacher. There's always something special around one of the many corners of this fan-favourite circuit. So here we are once again, ready to go racing through the Ardennes Forest. 4.35 miles of long straights, fast corners and massive elevation changes. It makes this not only one of the most exciting circuits on the calendar, but one that makes for some consistently high-quality racing as well. Simply put it, there really is no place quite like Spa. It's just about time to go to the track for the beginning of the race, but before we do, Anthony Davidson, what types of strategy do you think we can expect for today's event?
Well, there's a lot that both the driver and the team have to keep in mind when going into a race. The tyres, fuel, energy recovery systems, the list goes on and on. But I think the key to today's victory will come down to the pit stop strategy. Come in too soon and you might find yourself needing more than one stop. Too late and you're putting yourself at a disadvantage by spending longer on worn tyres.
Let's run you through the driver grid order for today's exciting race. A fantastic effort from Charles Leclerc yesterday puts him on pole and the owner driver alongside. Looking down the rest of the grid, we have Perez, Verstappen, Lewis Hamilton and Bottas, Sainz, Norris, Ricciardo and Lance Stroll, Schwartzman, Giovinazzi, George Russell and Mick Schumacher, Tsunoda, Fernando Alonso, they've taken a grid penalty, Nikita Mazepin and Pierre Gasly, Ocon, they'll be starting further back after an earlier grid penalty, Matsushita, Latifi and Guan Yu Zhou. Which of these talented drivers will come out on top today?
Heading into this one then, there are quite a few grid penalties across the field, so we are going to have a little bit of a recap of the order. Before we begin though, everyone is starting on the soft tyres for this Grand Prix, and weirdly enough, the whole top 8 from qualifying is somehow unchanged despite the shenanigans with the order further down the field. In terms of P1, Charles Leclerc still remains there. He'll be looking to keep that position and further extend his championship lead on ourselves, while we need to reduce the deficit by taking a victory in front of him today. Then it's the 2 Red Bulls. Perez will be looking to finish in front of his teammate Max Verstappen. Verstappen, though, he'll be looking for yet another fantastic podium result this season and to continue his top 4 finishing streak. Then we've got the 2 Mercedes of Lewis Hamilton and Valtteri Bottas. The question is, do they have race pace that's similar to the Red Bulls? Can they get in the mix, or will they be battling amongst themselves? Behind them, it's then Carlos Sainz in P7 in the Ferrari. He'll be thinking about his car. Does it have the pace to try and rival the Mercs, or will it be under pressure from Lando Norris, who's looking very pacey in qualifying? Can he continue that into the race and take some good points in his McLaren? He, of course, starts in front of his teammate Daniel Ricciardo, who's promoted up to 9th. He really lacked pace in qualifying compared to his teammate. Will he be able to bounce back in the race and potentially battle Lando? Then, inheriting P10 is Lance Stroll in his Alpha Tauri. The Alpha Tauri, not an extremely competitive car, but Lance will be looking to see if he can take some points this weekend. So will Robert Schwartzman. He got some points at Austria earlier in the season. Can he get some more here today in his Aston Martin? Never rule it out. There could be some shenanigans further in front. Antonio Giovinazzi starts in P12 in his Williams. After a disappointing qualifying, he's saved by grid penalties, but it'd be difficult for him to stay there in that car. Then it's George Russell in P13. He's got a lot of work to recover towards his teammate, the Ferraris. Scattered in a sense off across the field. Sainz P7, Russell P13. Mick Schumacher starts P14 in the Haas, promoted up there, and it's going to be a difficult one to stay there, but I'm sure he'll put on a show for us with some top-class defending. Then Yuki Tsunoda starts in P15. He's saved after an incredibly disappointing qualifying by grid penalties for others. The question is, what can he do from there? Then we got the Alpine of Fernando Alonso. P16 for him due to grid penalties, but I'm sure he'll be charging back up the field. That could be quite entertaining in the Grand Prix, the Alpine looking a pacey car. He starts in front of Nikita Mazepin, who'll probably drop backwards like a stone, judging on his pace so far this season and the pace of the Haas. Pierre Gasly starts in P18 in the Alpha Tauri. Real shame for him after a strong quali result. He'll struggle to make it up the order in that car. while he starts in front of his fellow countryman Esteban Ocon, who's P19 in his Alpine, once again near the back of the field. It'll be a tall order to get into the points today, but I wouldn't rule out some top-class Esteban Ocon overtakes. Nubaharu Matsushita starts P20, bit disappointing for the rookie after a strong qualifying result. Not much you can do, can he make it up the order? And then we've got the Williams of Nicholas Latifi, who starts in P21. And then behind Nicholas, we of course have Guan Yu Zhou. What can he do in the Grand Prix from the back? In terms of strategy, we have to start on the soft tyres that we used in Q2. We are then going to go to the mediums until the end. The question is, will anyone make a strategy mistake and opt for the hard tyres? That's what we've got to watch out for, but it's softer mediums for ourselves. And now then, here we go. The Spa Grand Prix in Belgium. 5 red lights. A long hold, they're out, and away we go. Charles Leclerc getting an okay start in front of us. A pole one for Perez, who's already dropping behind Max Verstappen, who's rivaling us into turn 1, but we are going to manage to stay in front using the curb on the exit. So it's Charles, me, Max, Checo, Lewis, and it's Robert Schwartzman up to P6. What a start in this Grand Prix. He's going to go side by side up through Eau Rouge and Radion with Daniel Ricciardo. Absolutely fantastic, scintillating battling, and it's continuing down the Kennel Straight. Surely not. We could nearly have 3 wide. Bottas getting into it. Ricciardo comes through into P6. Bottas side by side with Robert Schwartzman, and Bottas is going to come through into P7. Carlos Sainz in P9. Further back there, Lando Norris losing places off the start. Latifi going side by side with Guan Yu Zhou there. Fantastic battling between the two. Zhou, though, stays in front. He seems to have dropped quite a way off the back of Matsushita. Looking further back then, so it's Latifi and then Mazepin at the back. He has dropped really far back. Oh, and he's lost the side of his front wing. He has lost the side of his front wing. Disaster for Nikita Mazepin. He's going to have to pit in this Grand Prix. Charles Leclerc, my teammate, currently leads the Grand Prix, and then we're starting to drop away already in P2. Then it's Max Verstappen and Sergio Perez. Lewis Hamilton is then followed by Daniel Ricciardo and Valtteri Bottas, with Schwartzman in front of Carlos Sainz. And slow starting, Lando Norris, who's down to P10. Then it's Lance Stroll in front of Antonio Giovinazzi, with George Russell looking very racy alongside. He's going to try and go down around the inside line into this flat left-hander, and he gets the move done. Russell up into 12th, then it's Giovinazzi and Fernando Alonso. Then it's Mick Schumacher, Yuki Tsunoda and Esteban Ocon up to P17 in front of Pierre Gasly, Nobuharu Matsushita. Guan Yu Zhou here, who's gone incredibly slowly, and I wonder if he's got front wing damage, and he does! Zhou is in on lap number 1. He's into the pits. The Alfa Romeo driver will likely be joined by, yes, Nikita Mazepin, who's lost the side of his front wing there. Some big damage to his car. There's no visible damage on Zhou's car, but I'm guessing it is front wing damage for him. A real shame in this Grand Prix. It is front wing damage, not visible, but clearly causing him some issues. Fresh set of soft tyres are on, so he's not going for hards until the end of the Grand Prix. He's opted to go for the two-stop strategy. Mazepin's putting on the mediums. Can't see him going to the end of the Grand Prix. And then, meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda versus Esteban Ocon. Ocon down the inside line of Yuki Tsunoda. Tsunoda's going to try and fight it, but Ocon up into P16. A stunning move there from the Frenchman, already up into P16 off the start of this Grand Prix. Behind him then, Guan Yu Zhou in P21, way off the field now. Bit of a shame for him. Mazepin further back in P22, hold 9 seconds behind Zhou in the Alfa Romeo. And now Esteban Ocon is chasing on to Mick Schumacher, and he's going to go side by side with Mick Schumacher through sector 3, and absolutely fantastic and incredible pace in that Alpine, just glides past the Haas, as you'd expect really with the Haas's pace. And now it's his teammate Fernando Alonso who's having a look at the back of the Williams of Antonio Giovinazzi. Alonso down the inside line. Giovinazzi has DRS too, but he can't defend. Alonso down the inside line, fantastic. Well, they're going to go side by side, I think. There, yes they are. Antonio Giovinazzi though pushed the outside line, and he's forced to concede the position to Fernando Alonso, the Spaniard, up into P13. On that number 3 for ourselves, it's a pretty simple one at the moment. We've just got to try and keep somewhat close to my teammate. We've got much better pace in the Red Bulls and the Mercs and the McLarens and the Ferraris behind. It's just my teammate is extremely quick. You can see this has been a really decent lap for ourselves, but we're still 2 seconds behind. We've just got to try and stop that gap from increasing too much and hope for something towards the end of the race that could potentially help us. You never know. He could have a spin or a disaster, and we've got to be there to be able to capitalise on anything like that. Meanwhile, Robert Schwartzman currently in P18 after an incredible start. He's under pressure, though, from Carlos Sainz, who's got DRS. Schwartzman doesn't. Sainz goes down the inside line at the start of Sector 2. Side by side, Schwartzman trying to protest it here, but then Carlos Sainz is going to have the inside line, and he gets the move done. On to lap number 5, and Robert Schwartzman's now under pressure from Lando Norris, who's looking to follow through the scarlet red Ferrari, and Lando Norris is going to go around the outside line there. Meanwhile, further back, Giovinazzi versus Esteban Ocon. Ocon round the outside line of Giovinazzi gets the move done before the braking point. Meanwhile, Lando Norris and Robert Schwartzman going side by side. Schwartzman forcing Lando Norris out onto the curb, and Lando Norris cannot come through, but he's going to have another attempt here on lap number 6 down the Kennel Straight. DRS once again open in the rear wing of that McLaren, and he's chasing, he's closing, he's going to go down the inside line, nearly pushed onto the grass, and he's going to be side by side through this section. We've seen that so many times. Beautiful to watch. Lando Norris, though, getting better traction out that section, and he gets the move done into P9. So Charles Leclerc currently leads the Grand Prix. My teammate is staying out. He's happy with his tyres at the moment. We're certainly staying out. What about the 2 Red Bulls? It is starting to get into pit stop territory for those who did manage to make it through to Q3. Verstappen and Perez not coming in. Hamilton not going in. Now there's Ricciardo. Valtteri Bottas staying out. He's currently P7. Carlos Sainz, though, is coming into the pits here. The Spaniard is opting to enter the pit box, and he's going to try and hopefully get some fresh tyres. What tyres are it going to be? Quite early pit stop, but of course maybe a soft tyre starting to struggle after 6 laps of a Grand Prix and some qualifying session. It's the soft tyres going on. Carlos Sainz is going to have to pit again in this Grand Prix. A 2-stop strategy, that's not going to be quick. Real Ferrari strategy mistake once again. Yuki Tsunoda and Pierre Gasly meanwhile going side by side. Gasly looking to have the inside line as we head into Rouge, and he's going to get the move done. Fantastic work there from Pierre Gasly in front of Yuki Tsunoda. But Russell has made a huge mistake. Not just him, it's the Ferrari strategists. They really messed up in this Grand Prix, and he's now in P20 with another pit stop to do. The 2-stop strategy might be entertaining to watch him fighting through the field, but it's not going to help him get points. But now he's getting really close to the back of Latifi, into Pouon, down the inside line, and Sainz comes through into P19. Fantastic. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc is into the pits. He'll be joined by Daniel Ricciardo in the McLaren, and it is both Red Bulls and both Mercedes drivers opting to stay out at this stage of the Grand Prix. Softs off, hards are on for Charles Leclerc. That's a slow strategy, exactly what we needed, because we are going to go for the much faster mediums probably on the next lap, and Ricciardo opts for the hard. So some big strategy mistakes, not quite as disastrous as Carlos Sainz 2-stopper. What will George Russell opt for? Will it be the hard compound tyres? Yes, it will. Another strategy mistake. I cannot quite believe this here. The AI really shooting their own feet. Charles Leclerc opting to go for the hards. He's out in 6th. Looking further down the order, Ricciardo out in 12th. Mick Schumacher under a bit of pressure here from Pierre Gasly. Gasly chasing down the Haas. Both of them still yet to pit, I do believe, in this Grand Prix. Gasly with DRS. Schumacher doesn't have any, and Gasly steams past there. Meanwhile, Yuki Tsunoda and Carlos Sainz looking to jockey for position as we head into Sector 2, and Sainz on those fresh soft tyres comfortably comes through into P15. Then behind him it's Tsunoda, Matsushita, Latifi. George Russell out in P19. It'll work for him to do. It's Antonio Giovinazzi behind. We are coming into the pits here. Quite a lot of wear on these soft tyres. 46% on the front left. So we certainly need some fresh tyres. But rather helpful for ourselves, Bottas has been holding up my teammate now for quite a while. This is absolutely perfect for ourselves, because we're about to come into the pits and we are going to gain an awful lot of time compared to my teammate. The mediums are on, because let's not forget, Valtteri Bottas has not pitted yet in this Grand Prix. He's on old soft tyres. My teammate, yes, he might have gained a little bit on his out lap compared to our lap, but as you can see, we are going to be able to chase onto him. Meanwhile, Max Verstappen coming out the pits just behind Esteban Ocon. Lewis Hamilton and Daniel Ricciardo are going to be very close. Hamilton on the pit exit manages to keep P8, and it's Pierre Gasly in front of Carlos Sainz there. Max Verstappen, meanwhile, is chasing down Esteban Ocon down the Kennel Straight. Verstappen's going to go down the inside line of the Alpine. Fantastic work on his medium tyres. One man who's gone for a sensible strategy in this Grand Prix. Right, so Schumacher exiting the pits, a bit of ghosting there, Matsushita behind, then Tsunoda and Latifi. Latifi seems to be checking out the gearbox of Yuki Tsunoda, quite literally, in the back of his car somehow on the pit exit. But this could start to get entertaining and spicy. Meanwhile, my teammate Charles Leclerc, as I was saying, is losing an awful lot of time. behind Valtteri Bottas. He cannot get through, and this is perfect for ourselves in this Grand Prix because we are catching and catching and catching, and this is going to put us right in the mix on better suited tyres. The mediums, of course, much quicker at a track like Spa than the hard tyres. Sergio Perez, the leader, is coming into the pits. I can see Valtteri Bottas joining him. It's lap number 9, so he's been on those soft tyres for quite a long. The mediums should be going on for him. Meanwhile, we are placed just over a second behind my teammate, right in the mix on the better medium tyres. The mediums are on for Sergio Perez. A nice clean stop at Red Bull, where we see the same at Mercedes, and a nice one over there from the Mercedes crew. Bottas out of the pits. So Max Verstappen, he should be out in front of Sergio Perez. It could be quite interesting, but Verstappen is going to speed through while Perez comes out in P4. Hamilton will be P5. Daniel Ricciardo. Carlos Sainz continuing along. What will we see? Ricciardo in front of Valtteri Bottas. Bottas down there in P7. Carlos Sainz ahead of Lando Norris, George Russell, Lance Stroll, Fernando Alonso, and Robert Schwartzman's exiting the pit. He's going to be out behind Lance Stroll and Fernando Alonso, and it's Esteban Ocon, Antonio Giovinazzi, Pierre Gasly's exiting the pit. He'll be out in front of Mick Schumacher in the Haas. So Gasly in front of Schumacher. Matsushita is pressuring the back of the Haas at this stage in the Grand Prix. So Yuki Tsunoda and Latifi behind. Looking further at the field though, Robert Schwartzman versus Fernando Alonso. Schwartzman looking around the outside line of Alonso. He's then got the inside line, but he's going to have to deal with the outside line, and he's forced to stay P13. Looking further back, Nobuharu Matsushita versus Mick Schumacher. Another overtake down the Kennel Straight, and Matsushita speeding past Mick Schumacher using that DRS. Didn't even have to contest it once he'd got to the braking zone. Now, on board Yuki Tsunoda on lap number 11, he's chasing onto the back of Mick Schumacher. Schumacher continuing to drop like a stone, but he has put up a fight for those that he can. He can't do so really here because Yuki Tsunoda flies past before the braking zone and can get nice and comfortably back onto the racing line so he doesn't lose too much time. P18 for the Alfa Romeo, and now Esteban Ocon is looking to dispatch Robert Schwartzman in this Grand Prix. Ocon chasing and chasing the back of Robert Schwartzman. Schwartzman doesn't have DRS. Esteban Ocon has that flap in his rear wing open. It's going to be around the outside line for Esteban. The Frenchman then's got the inside line. He's going to have to brave it around the outside line because look at this. Schwartzman not giving up, side by side on the exit, and they're still side by side. Ocon's going to have to hang it once again round the outside line at the hairpin. He does exactly that. Great traction off the corner. Inside line for No Name. A beautiful battle. And Ocon's into 13th. Simply fantastic to watch. Meanwhile, Pierre Gasly is chasing down Antonio Giovinazzi. This could be a pretty simple move. Gasly with a lot more pace in that AlphaTauri than the Williams, and he absolutely glides through using the DRS up into P15 for Pierre Gasly. But some simply beautiful and stunning battling here at Spa. My teammate Charles Leclerc then currently leads ourselves. We are catching on our medium tyres. Much quicker compound, and it's really starting to show. Max Verstappen is then in front of his teammate Sergio Perez, who's chasing, but can't really manage to go for a move. Then we've got Lewis Hamilton in front of Daniel Ricciardo in P6, running well. It's Valtteri Bottas, and Carlos Sainz has caught up to this battle. Great pace, but he will have to pit again. It's Lando Norris and George Russell who rounds out the top 10, and Carlos Sainz's pit stop is going to happen now. He's coming into the pits off those soft compound tyres, and it will be probably the medium tyres until the end of the Grand Prix. But huge strategy mistakes. The two-stop strategy, not a good option, and he will pay the price. Lando Norris up into P8. Carlos Sainz's teammate Russell up into P9. And at Ferrari, it's a reasonably okay stop for him. The mediums are on. Stroll comes through, Alonso comes through, Ocon comes through, Robert Schwartzman comes through, and Carlos Sainz is going to be out in P14 with a lot of work to do to try and get into points. It's going to be quite a tough challenge, especially with the likes of the Alpines in front, and it is Robert Schwartzman in front, directly in front of Carlos Sainz. Sainz will be looking to dispatch him quickly. Behind Sainz, it is Pierre Gasly, Antonio Giovinazzi, Nobuharu Matsushita, Yuki Tsunoda, Mick Schumacher in the Haas, and he's in front of Nicholas Latifi, and Latifi getting fairly close to the back of the Haas, and it's Guanyu Zhou and Nikita Mazepin well out of contention in this Grand Prix. And you can see on lap number 14, we have just been putting in lap after lap like it's qualifying here. And we are really closing in onto my teammate. Now gap 4/10, a bit of a lock-up though at the bus stop chicane. That costs us some time. DRS activated on the exit down the main straight. A very short burst here. You can't really go for an overtake into the hairpin. We haven't seen any into the hairpin here today. But we're going to be looking for a dose of DRS down that lovely long Kennel straight. We are drifting further right, using some ERS though, and hopefully we can carry good speed through Eau Rouge into Radion, and we are actually managing to do so on our medium tyres. DRS activated here. We're chasing onto Charles. I think we'll be too far away. We're actually getting fairly close. He leaves a bit of space on the left-hand side. We go for it, but then we're forced to back off because he squeezes us tight. And on lap number 15, we are forced to stay in P2, but we're going to keep trying to force a mistake out of him. Matsushita currently P17. He's made decent progress so far in this Grand Prix. He'll be looking to chase onto the back of Antonio Giovinazzi further on. He spun! He spun at turn 1. He's stamped on the throttle in the middle of the corner. And he's down to P18. I cannot believe this. Now it's P20. He's forced to let Schumacher and Latifi through. He's not going to recover that many positions in this Grand Prix. Disaster from the rookie. A huge mistake. A really quite silly mistake. And that is incredibly costly here at Spa. Meanwhile, we are continuing to chase onto my teammate Charles Leclerc. And we are even closer this lap. The gap 5/10 on the exit of Radion. And now down the Kennel straight, we're using ERS and DRS, double dose here, and we are closing some space down the inside line. We're going to go for it, but forced to brake early so we don't end up ploughing into him running wide, and he glides back through. We're getting close, but still, we've got to get this move done fairly soon before his hards start to actually become fairly decent compared to our worn medium tyres. Well, Carlos Sainz has finally caught up to Robert Schwartzman. Sainz, of course, going for the two-stop strategy, but he is on very fresh mediums as a result, and he glides past Robert Schwartzman pretty comfortably. That certainly was not a strategy to go, and Ferrari will have to look at that in the debrief later today and really think what on earth was going through the strategy's head at that point in the Grand Prix, similar to the Hungary shenanigans with Mercedes and McLaren last weekend. But we are closing and closing onto Charles Leclerc, getting closer and closer. You can see, looking up into turn 1, nearly going to the back of him. Thankfully, we don't do that. But this is really has to be our opportunity. The gap just over 5/10, and that's under 5/10 now as we head through Eau Rouge and Radion, and we're gaining more time through there. Braver on the throttle through there, not lifting as much. DRS is activated. We're closing and closing very comfortably on Charles Leclerc. He tries to force onto the grass, but we get the move done before the braking zone. Slot back onto the racing line. Purple sector 1, and that is P1 in the Belgian Grand Prix. I cannot quite believe this here. I really cannot quite believe this. A track where we notoriously struggle quite a bit. Charles opted for that as he's paid the price, and now we've just got to keep this P1, and our first win in Belgium is set to arise. Meanwhile, Lewis Hamilton, currently P5 in this Grand Prix, hasn't quite got the pace of the Red Bulls. He's in front of Ricciardo. Great performance so far from him. In front of Bottas, who's getting very patient, I would probably say, behind Ricciardo. He's gone over the curb there. Yellow flags around. Oh, he's slowing down. He must be retiring from the Grand Prix, and Bottas is out. What a shame. Lando Norris is going to come through into P7. Frustrations for Valtteri Bottas. Russell takes P8. Lance Stroll will take P9, equivalent to 2 points. And if he stays in front of the Alpines, that's what it'll be. Alonso will move into P10. Meanwhile, further back, Matsushita side by side with Latifi. Matsushita recovering. He's going to go down the inside line of Latifi up into P19. Continue to fight his way back up the order after that spin. And now, on to lap number 19, down the Kennel straight. He's having a look at trying to get past Mick Schumacher around the outside line. He's going to go for the move. Mick Schumacher, though, protesting it side by side. Fantastic racing. Schumacher in a much slower house, down the inside line, forcing Matsushita a little bit onto the curb. Really great to see some side-by-side racing here between the two. Schumacher on the much slower, hard compound tyres, and Matsushita gets the move done at no name. Another scintillating battle between the AI. Meanwhile, Latifi is taking advantage of Mick Schumacher's fight with Matsushita. He left Schumacher vulnerable, and Latifi comes through. Fantastic from Latifi. Really clever move. And this is some beautiful racing here at Spa. On lap number 20, as we're about to head on to lap number 21 at the end of this Grand Prix. It's been an action-packed one with overtakes throughout. I have thoroughly enjoyed this one. If you guys have enjoyed this one, hit the like button down below and subscribe to the channel. But Charles is really chasing onto the back of us here. He's getting fairly close. We're just trying to keep a comfortable gap, but he's actually gaining a poor exit off a hairpin for ourselves, meaning he is now just under 5/10 behind. We are strong through Rouge and Radion, but then maybe a bit too brave and that cost us a tad on the exit. Thankfully, though, we're using ERS defensively, and he's not closing quick enough. And we are going to keep that P1 position on lap number 21. Got to defend that for just one more lap, and we are heading on to the last lap in this Grand Prix. Max Verstappen's set to take another podium, but this time it hasn't been plain sailing for him. His teammate Sergio Perez has certainly rivaled him. What a Grand Prix it's been for Daniel Ricciardo too. We've got to focus on ourselves because it has been a really weird Grand Prix in terms of strategy for my team. Opting for the hard tyres, and that has cost him once again. Strategy mistakes, and that invited us in. He had much better race pace than us at the start of the Grand Prix when we were both on soft tyres, but then the tyre differences allowed us to get into the mix, and we are in front at the end of the Kennel Straight. We've just got to keep it nice and clean through the middle sector, and the victory here in Spa for the first time in this career mode will be ours, meaning that the only track out of the 10 tracks on the calendar that we have never won at is the previous Grand Prix, the Hungarian Grand Prix. That's providing we can just nicely finish off this lap through Poo on a fantastic corner, but a corner where my teammate Charles Leclerc is so much quicker and so much better at carrying pace through. He's getting very close to the back of us. That's fine though, as long as we just don't leave the door open. Very sweaty hands moments. My hands could almost slip out the steering wheel, but we should be safe now. We're out of Sector 2, almost in a sense the danger zone, into Sector 3, which is certainly where we managed to excel compared to my teammate, and you can see we start to drift away now using ERS through the SS section. Our setup really suiting the first and final sector, and we are going to be victorious here at the Belgian Grand Prix. What a race this has been, a really, really fun one, and we are winners at Spa.
Not just victory today then, but the championship as well. What a spectacular season they've had. Congratulations to the whole team. Anthony Davidson, how do you think they were able to set themselves apart today?
Well, I honestly feel it was down to the driver and car today. I mean, we can talk driver skill all day, but if you don't have a solid team to back that, you're never going to get anywhere. When you hit that sweet spot of having both an excellent driver and an incredible car, that's when you see results like those we witnessed today.
Well, I'm thoroughly exhausted after the excitement of that race, but I'm sure it's nothing compared to our drivers here. They've worked hard to make it up there, and it's great to see them make their way out onto the podium.
It simply could not have been a better result for ourselves this weekend. P1, 26 points, the maximum amount of points, of course. 25 points for the race win, and an extra point for the fastest lap, a 1 minute 42.656. I wasn't expecting to be taking that this weekend in a pivotal race, of course, this weekend, as that reduces our deficit to my teammate Charles Leclerc in the championship standings, of course. Charles Leclerc finishing P2 out there today. He had the race pace to certainly win it, but a really, really poor strategy decision to go onto those hard tyres proved very costly, and we managed to get past him at the end of the Grand Prix, which means he has just 18 points from this one, and his lead slowly starts to evaporate heading into the final two races of the season. Then we got the two Red Bulls, Max Verstappen in front of Sergio Perez. Verstappen managed to get ahead of his teammate Perez off the start of the Grand Prix and takes yet another podium this season. P3 for him, a strong result, and 15 points, finishing in front of his teammate Sergio Perez. He had a strong qualifying and a fairly strong race too. He managed to cling onto the back of his teammate but could not get back past him after he lost the pace at the start of the Grand Prix on the first lap. But 12 points in the end for Checo, still a strong result. And a strong result for Lewis Hamilton in P5. He didn't have the pace of the Red Bulls, neither did his teammate Valtteri Bottas in the Grand Prix, but still a solid 10 points for Lewis as he finished in front of two Mercedes-powered cars, the both McLarens, in P6 and P7. A great result for Daniel Ricciardo in P6 from 9th on the grid, only 3 seconds behind a faster Mercedes, and a well-deserved 8 points for his performance out there today. He finished comfortably in front of his teammate Lando Norris. He'll be very disappointed with his performance, holds 6 seconds behind Daniel Ricciardo and only 6 points in the end. For Lando out there today, he simply did not have the race pace and was nearly under threat from a charging George Russell. A fantastic recovery from outside the top 10 in P13 to finish P8 and just 3 seconds behind Lando Norris. 4 points for George out there today. Solid work in his Ferrari. He then finished in front of Lance Stroll, who took points starting P10 and finished P9. A couple of points from him today, and a fantastic defensive drive at the end of the Grand Prix to fend off from quicker charging Alpines, one of those two being Fernando Alonso, who finished P10. The Spaniard taking a point out there today with a great recovery from 16th on the grid. The Alpine looking a very pacey midfield car once again, really showed that in this Grand Prix. He was then in front of his fellow countryman Carlos Sainz, who was P11. The two-stop strategy was not the way to go, and he and Ferrari ultimately paid the price. No points for him, just narrowly missing out at the end of the Grand Prix. But a pivotal strategy mistake, and that has cost him this Grand Prix and potentially what could have been some strong points. Esteban Ocon finished P12, a great recovery from 19th on the grid. No points today, but still some fantastic Esteban Ocon overtakes, which you'll love to see. He finished in front of Robert Schwartzman, who was P13 in the end. A great start for him. He did then trickle slowly down the order, but still a great drive in his Aston Martin. He was then in front of another car beginning with A. It was the AlphaTauri this time. Pierre Gasly finishing P14 from 18th on the grid. And an absolutely fantastic drive from him, considering the car he's in. Couldn't quite to recover to where his teammate was. Lance Stroll, of course, in P9 in the end, but a great drive from Pierre Gasly to finish P14. He was in front of Antonio Giovinazzi, who slipped down to P15 in his Williams. Still, though, a strong drive considering the car he is in. We'd be pretty happy with that. Didn't really have the pace, though, of Gasly, who's in a similarly paced AlphaTauri. Yuki finished down there in P16 in his Alfa Romeo. Tsunoda, it was an okay Grand Prix for him. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't the best, really, to be honest. Moving on from him, it was then his fellow countryman, Matsushita, who finished P17. It could have been a top 15 finish, but a rookie mistake. A really stupid one, stamping on the throttle in the middle of the corner at the hairpin at turn 1, spanning round, and he recovered to P17. He was then in front of Nicholas Latifi, who was P18. A solid drive from 21st on the grid, and a beautiful overtake at P1 on Mick Schumacher, who finished in P19. He dropped down the order, but provided us some entertainment in the Grand Prix. Not much you can really do when you're in such an uncompetitive Haas car this season. He then finished in front of the two final finishers, Guan Yu Zhou, who was affected by the first lap incident, and then finished a whole lap behind in the end and couldn't really compete. That was really frustrating for him, and also for Nikita Mazepin, who was the last of the runners. He finished, of course, Valtteri Bottas was P22 as he failed to finish due to a unlucky mechanical failure when he was running in the points. In terms of driver standings, then, we do reduce the gap to my teammate Charles Leclerc. That's now 19 points. We have 149, while he has 168 on the board. All to play for into the final two races of the season, which are, of course, Mexico and Jeddah. Then in terms of the Red Bulls, Max Verstappen has 120 points, is now 50 points in front of P4, which is his teammate, Sergio Perez, on 70. Then in P5, George Russell in his Ferrari has 51 points. He's in front of Valtteri Bottas, who has 47. In P6, Bottas failing to score today. His teammate Lewis Hamilton climbs up the order into P7. He's 1 point behind Valtteri. Hamilton on 46 points, while Lando Norris moves down to P8 on 44. Sainz failed to score. He drops down to P9 with 36 points on the board now, while Daniel Ricciardo is just 4 points behind as he moves up into the top 10, 32 for the Honey Badger. Pierre Gasly is now down to P11 in the standings. He has 27 points, while Lance Stroll, his teammate, has 10. P13 is Fernando Alonso. He has 7 points, 1 point more than Nobuharu Matsushita, who drops down to P14. Still, a fantastic result last time at Hungary. Leaves him on 6 points in the standings. Then, of course, behind Nobuharu Matsushita, you have Fernando Alonso's teammate, Esteban Ocon, who scored 2 points last time, I do believe it was, at Hungary. And then Robert Schwartzman has a solitary point. In terms of the constructors, we are constructors champions. Finally done it here in Season 3. And that's really thanks to Charles Leclerc. He's been an absolutely perfect teammate. Insane pace. The only mistakes being some strategy mistakes from the team. But we have won the standings in the constructors. We are the best team on the grid. 127 point lead now over Red Bull. 317 for ourselves, while Red Bull have 190. Mercedes move up to P3. They have 93 points, 6 more than Ferrari, who have 87 in 4th, while McLaren are in 5th on 76, catching up to the Scarlet Red team. Then AlphaTauri have 37 points, while Alpine move a little bit further away than Aston Martin. Alpine now on 9. Aston Martin have 7. Alfa Romeo, Williams and Haas still yet to score, but we are Constructors' champions here in Season 3 with 2 races left to spare. And as I was saying, a perfect season pretty much for me and my teammate, Charles Leclerc. But we are victorious here in Spain, and it really could not have been a more exciting, more enjoyable, and it couldn't have been a better result for ourselves here. But if you guys have enjoyed the video, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. But thanks a lot for watching. I'll catch you sometime soon. We move on to the penultimate race of the season, the Mexico Grand Prix in Season 3.